Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. News on Channel 2. Thank you for joining us, and we start with our news headlines. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi receives greeting cables from world leaders on the 6th of October war anniversary. U.S. Pompeo says no country can hold Europe hostage in energy developments. And US-backed Syrian force warns of all-out war in response to any Turkish attack. And now to the news in full. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli and Chairman of Suez Canal Authority, as well as head of the economic zone of the Suez Canal. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said that the meeting focused on executive steps and procedures of developing and upgrading the Suez Canal Authority. During the meeting, President al-Sisi gives his directives to finalize all under construction projects at the Suez Canal, namely the infrastructure projects of the economic zone. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received a greeting cable from the custodian of the two holy shrines, King Salman ibn Abdul Aziz Al Saud, marking the 6th of October war anniversary. In the cable, King Salman expressed his sincere greetings and wishes of health and happiness for President al-Sisi, the Egyptian people and the government, looking forward for more progress and development for the country. Also, Saudi Crown Prince and Minister of Defense Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdul Aziz Al Saud sent similar greeting cables to President al-Sisi. Meanwhile, the President received cables from Bahraini King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa and Bahraini Prime Minister Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa. Moreover, Kuwaiti Prince Sheikh Subah Al Ahmad Gabr Al Subah sent cable of greeting on the same occasion. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi also received greeting cables from top state officials, as well as Al-Azhar Grand Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Al-Tayyib. Al-Tayyib asserted that October war will always be a witness of Egypt's greatness and strength, stressing the need to line up with the army in its fight against terrorism. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi issued today a presidential decree to pardon a number of prisoners on the occasion of the 46th anniversary of October victories. A committee from the concerned security bodies, presided by Assistant of Interior Minister for the prisons sector, has been formed to investigate who deserve the pardon. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli issued decisions to establish a number of industrial chambers, among which was the handicraft industry chamber, the furniture, the petrochemical, weavers chamber, as well as the cinema production chamber. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that his country wants to ensure that rules govern exploration of energy sources in the Mediterranean Sea. Pompeo comments came during a visit to Athens today, adding that Turkey's illegal drilling in the region is unacceptable. Pompeo said that the Turks' illegal drilling is unacceptable and that the U.S. will continue to take diplomatic actions. Pompeo also, during meeting with Greek government officials, raised concerns about Chinese investments in infrastructure. Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul Ghait expressed deep concern over the latest developments in Iraq, adding he was following keenly the situation. Abul Ghait called the Iraqi government to exert all efforts to ease tension and start negotiations to end the demonstrations. On his part, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called upon the Iraqi government to hold immediate dialogue with the demonstrators to stop the escalation of violence in Iraq. Iraqi authorities lifted a day-long curfew in Baghdad today that anti-government protesters had defied, as the toll from 4 days of violent unrest rose to 72 killed and hundreds injured. Traffic ran as normal through the Iraqi capital, and streets and main squares were otherwise quiet. On his part, President Burhan Saleh and officials from Prime Minister Adel Abdel Mahdi's office met protest leaders from Baghdad and other provinces to discuss their demands. The country's parliament speaker proposed yesterday improving public housing for the poor and job opportunities for young people, as well as holding those who had killed protesters to account. A drone strike today targeting an airport in western Libya wounded one person, while also reportedly causing flights to be suspended. The loyalist forces alleged that the strike on Misrata Airport, 200 kilometers from the capital Tripoli, was carried out rival fighters answering to the head of Libyan army, Khalifa Haftar. Flights were briefly suspended to allow for safety checks. Misrata has operated as the last functioning airport to western Libya for just over a month, as the capital's Mitiga facility was shut off to repeated airstrikes by Haftar's forces. The US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces said today it would not hesitate to turn any Turkish attack into an all-out war to defend its region in northeast Syria. More details in the following report.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that Turkey will carry out an air and ground military operation as soon as Saturday or Sunday, targeting the SDF-controlled area east of the Euphrates River in Syria. In another development, 9 militants were killed today in Russian airstrikes on Syria's war-torn province of Idlib. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that Russian strikes this morning targeted the Horas al-Din group and Ansar al-Tawhid in eastern Idlib, adding 8 others were wounded. 6 of the dead were members of the Al-Qaeda-linked Horas al-Din, a group which is also targeted by the US-led coalition. Moscow is a key ally of Syria's President Bashar al-Assad in the country's civil war, and despite an Idlib ceasefire deal reached on August 31st, the province has continued to be targeted by Russian air attacks. Russia-backed regime fighters have for weeks been chipping away at the edges of the province bordering Turkey that is the last militant stronghold outside of Assad's control. In the late August clashes between anti-government fighters and regime forces left more than 50 dead on both sides when the militants attacked loyalist positions in the Taus. Last month, Russia and China vetoed a UN Security Council resolution backed by 12 of the 15 member states that called for a ceasefire in Idlib province. The Syrian war has killed more than 370,000 people and displaced millions since it erupted in 2011 with the brutal repression of anti-government protests.
Australia's Foreign Minister Marise Payne said that Iran has freed an Australian couple detained for more than 3 months and dropped all charges against them. The couple, identified by the ministry as Australian Mark Firkin and British-Australian Julie King, were said by media to have been detained over accusations of flying a drone without a permit. The arrest came amid a standoff between Western powers and Iran after the United States withdrew from a nuclear deal with Iran and imposed sanctions on it, aiming to halt its oil exports. A third British-Australian, identified earlier by her family as University of Melbourne academic Kelly Murray Gilbert, has not been released. She has been in detention for a year.
During that time to secure their release.
The U.S. trade deficit rose by nearly $1 billion in August as weakening foreign demand and the churning trade conflict ate into U.S. exports. According to the U.S. Commerce Department data, meanwhile, the strong U.S. dollar fueled American imports of consumer items like mobile telephones as well as As a result, the U.S. trade balance crept 1.6% higher to $54.9 billion for the month, surpassing economists' expectations. The unexpected increase in August could weigh on GDP calculations for the third quarter, while a global economic slowdown is expected to weaken U.S. exports toward the end of the year. According to the U.S. Labor Department, America's jobless rate tumbled in September to its lowest level in 50 years, delighting the White House, even though it may not assuage recession fears as President Donald Trump's trade wars persist. Meanwhile, with a strong dollar and slowing global economy, the U.S. trade deficit widened in August as the trade conflict ate into export growth. Trump immediately cheered the good jobs data, claiming his economic record should shield him from efforts to impeach him, and shortly after said a trade deal with China was possible soon. Unemployment fell 0.2 of a point to 3.5%, matching the rate last recorded in December 1969 and well below what analysts had forecast. Spain's acting Prime Minister said today that he would seek to defend the country's agricultural sector in the face of unacceptable proposed U.S. tariffs on European agricultural goods. The United States announced plans for new tariffs on a range of EU goods on Wednesday after the World Trade Organization ruled this week that some subsidies EU states paid to Airbus were illegal, giving the United States the right to respond with tariffs worth $7.5 billion. Spain estimates the new tariffs will affect about €1 billion of exports a year. Oil futures touched the lowest in nearly 2 months as the weak U.S. economic data heightened concerns that excess supplies will push prices lower. For the week, U.S. crude futures were on course for a 5.8% decline, which would be the worst performance since July 19th. Spot gold, a safe haven asset that investors often buy during times of heightened risk, rose 0.29% to $1,500 per ounce, on course for a 0.84% weekly gain.